Almost 30 years ago, Olympic modern pentathlon champion Mauro Prosperi disappeared during the Marathon des Sables. The Italian deviated from his route by almost 300 kilometers, wandered through the sands without water supplies for 10 days, ate bats, drank his own urine, and somehow miraculously survived. Prosperi was brought into modern pentathlon by chance. At the age of 7, he and his father, like a true Italian, went to sign up for the football section. But it turned out that enrollment was not carried out that day. On the way back, Prosperi met a friend who worked as a secretary at the National Federation of Modern Pentathlon, and he gave the guy such a presentation of his sport that he wanted to try himself in it. Prosperi admitted that he was best at running, but he did not forget about other sports. After his first sporting successes, Prosperi was offered a contract by the Fiamme Oro Sports Club, owned by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The Italian accepted the offer and even started working as a police officer for additional income. Their pentathletics debut at the Olympic Games took place in 1984 in Los Angeles, where Italian pentathletics performed triumphantly. But Prosperi was a stranger at this celebration of life. The Italian, who won the national championship before the start of the Olympic Games and performed well at several international tournaments, was put on the bench. As a result, Prosperi's compatriot Daniele Massala won the individual tournament, and together with Carlo Massulo and Pierpaolo Cristofori won the team tournament. Prosperi, as an athlete in reserve, also received his gold medal, which became little consolation for him. In the end, I had no emotions left from that Olympics except anger, disappointment, and sadness. Yes, I received an Olympic gold medal as a member of the winning team in Los Angeles, but it doesn't mean anything to me because I didn't compete there, Mauro Prosperi shared. After the Olympics in Los Angeles, Prosperi was completely disillusioned with pentathlon and decided to focus on long-distance running, which had always been his signature event. Most of all, the Italian was fascinated by marathons and ultramarathons, and this despite the fact that in the pentathlon athletes run only 3,000 meters. Prosperi began competing in international competitions, especially enjoying races taking place in nature. The sport turned into a hobby for the Italian. In the early 90s, he learned about the Marathon des Sables, which takes place in the sands of the Sahara in Morocco and was 250 kilometers long. Prosperi was inspired by the idea of running this extreme ultramarathon and began training hard. The athlete ran 40 kilometers a day and constantly reduced the amount of water consumed in order to get used to dehydration. The Italian's wife was not happy with this idea and was very worried. Perhaps she had a premonition of something. This marathon is so risky that before the race I had to sign a paper with instruction on where to send my body if I died. We have 3 children, all of whom were under 8 years old at the time, so my wife was worried. I tried to cheer her up. The worst thing that can happen is if I get sunburned, Mauro Prosperi told her. Prosperi was very positive. The prospects of running for several days in the desert with a 10-15 kilogram backpack on his shoulder did not frighten him at all. Before the start of the marathon, he not only ran but also slept on the ground, learned to treat wounds, and carefully thought through the set of things that he would take with him to the race. Prosperi's goal was not just to overcome the distance, he wanted to win win or at least get on the podium. 80 people took part in the marathon, and for the first 3 days everything went well. Prosperi was close to the leading group in fourth place, enjoying the beauty of the desert and in decent physical condition. Everything changed on the fourth day when the ultramarathon participants were caught in a sandstorm, according to the rules of the race. In this case, all athletes must stop moving and wait out the bad weather, but in the practice this is not always possible. What made the situation more difficult for Prosperi was that he was completely alone when the storm began. The wind whipped with terrifying force. I was literally swallowed up by a yellow wall of sand. I was blinded and could barely breathe. Sand flew into my face. It felt like needles were piercing my face. It was the first time I experienced how powerful a sandstorm could be. I turned my back to the wind and wrapped a scarf around my head to protect my face. I was not disoriented and had to move to avoid being covered in sand. Eventually, I found a shelter where I decided to wait out the storm, recalls MAURO Prosperi. The storm lasted about 8 hours. By the time it ended, it was dark and Prosperi settled down for the night. He was given 36 hours to overcome the fourth stage. The Italian was sure that down he would continue moving, meet other participants and reach the finish line, but these plans were not destined to come true. The athlete had a compass and a map with him, but in the desert, where there are absolutely no landmarks, they turned out to be useless. After running for about 4 hours, I climbed to the top of the dune, from which I could see nothing but sand. Then I realized that things were bad, Prosperi recalled in an interview with the BBC. Realizing how bad the situation was, the Italian went into survival mode and first urinated in an empty bottle. As long as the body is not dehydrated, urine may be suitable for drinking, but further its consumption is life-threatening. Prosperi had with him a knife, a sleeping bag, 2 small flare guns, some food but very little water. On the second day, the athlete noticed a helicopter and fired a rocket launcher, but it did not react at all. Still, I remained calm. I was confident that their organizers had the ability and the means to find anyone lost in the desert. I still thought that sooner or later I would be saved, said the athlete. A few hours later, Prosperi came across a small stone structure which turned out to be a tomb. The athlete now had a roof over his head as well as a source of food and liquid. In the tomb he found many bats, which he did not hesitate to eat without any heat treatment. Even in this situation, I behaved easily and naturally, so from the outside it might seem as if I was somehow inadequate. Using a knife, he cut off their heads and sucked the blood through their necks. I remember I ate about 20, MAURO Prosperi said with a smile. The athlete did not disdain insects, snakes and lizards. Prosperi spent several days in the tomb. It seemed to him that it would be easier to find him this way. However, no one came for the athlete. The Italian only saw the plane flying by, but the second shot from the rocket launcher was useless. For the first time, the athlete was overcome by despair, in a fit of which he decided to take his own life. The runner wrote a farewell letter to his wife and daughters, went to bed, but in the morning he unexpectedly woke up. It turned out that due to monstrous dehydration, the athlete's blood thickened so much that it could not leave the body in a volume sufficient for suicide. Prosperi took this as a gift of fate and a signal to continue the fight. The athlete left his temporary shelter and set off, and at the beginning of the 8th day he came across a real oasis with drinking water. At first the Italian took it for hallucinations, but coming closer he realized that the reality of what was happening, and that's when I gave free rein to my emotions. I even cried with joy, said the Italian. Having regained his strength, Prosperi continued his journey, and on the morning of the 10th day he saw a girl tending goats. It was a victory. I just won my most important competition in life. This is how the athlete described these emotions. The frightened shepherdess called her parents, who turned out to be residents of a Berber village. They sheltered the exhausted athlete, provided him with first aid, and reported the stranger to the military, whose base was located nearby. Soon they appeared in the village, and Prosperi experienced a new portion of fear. I experienced real horror when they blindfolded me and took me somewhere. At that moment I thought, this is the end. Fortunately, the military, who turned out to be cheery and quickly sorted everything out and sent Prosperi to the hospital, from where he was finally able to call his wife. It turned out that during the 10-day wanderings, Mauro deviated from the marathon route by 291 kilometers, crossed the border of Morocco with Algeria, and lost 16 kilograms. The athlete was diagnosed with serious problem with the liver and vision, but in 2 years he managed to fully recover. At home, the Italian was greeted as a national hero. After such adventures, many people would never want to return to the desert, but for Prosperi, wandering through the sands had the opposite effect. Having regained his health, he began to dream of new desert marathons, and in total took part in 8 such races, including a performance at the same marathon des Sables in 2012. Because of this hobby, Mauro was even forced to divorce his wife, who could not stand the specific lifestyle of the athlete and was tired of worrying about him. I know I have a different woman, but she knows that I have my own mission in life. I can't change myself, noted Prosperi. In recent years, Mauro, who will soon celebrate his 70th birthday, has dreamed of completing a grand desert crossing of 7,000 kilometers from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea. The trip constantly has to be postponed due to the internal political problems in African countries located on the route. Considering the athlete's persistence and determination, it is already clear that in order to fulfill his dream, he is ready to take on solving these problems himself. Stay safe, stay tuned. 1, 2, 3, 4. Love you, baby. Till the end. We are inform you. We'll keep on fighting till the end. Do. In oh la la.